Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by our military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox.
My friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast is giving a voice to our veterans. On today's episode, we're having a My Veteran Story with Marine veteran James Johnson. I'm excited to have him on the podcast. But if you're enjoying these podcasts, then don't be shy. Go to the Lost Art Podcast, the Lost Art website. And you can donate money if you want to donate to help with the cause, or you can go and click on that link to be able to take you to some of the merchandise, some of the cool stuff like I got right here. Anyways, you can click on that, buy some merchandise. That helps us in continuing to get our veteran voices out for all to hear. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, then email me directly at the lostart@andrewcox@gmail.com. And with that, we have James here. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm privileged to know you.
I don't know about that. But hey, man, it's good to have you here. I'm excited to have you on. Excited to hear your story because I don't think I know your whole story. So it'll be good to hear it.
Yeah, I've seen that most of your people on your podcast come from your background of the band.
You got to start somewhere, so I'm just reaching out to people I know. You happen to be one of them.
Yeah. We were linked together between 2008 to 2011.
That's right. Yeah, some good times back then. Well, kind of. It's hit or miss during that time. Well, hey man, let's start at the beginning for you. We'll go back, like, where did you grow up? And then what drew you into military service, specifically the Marine Corps, and then we'll just go from there.
I grew up majority of my time in Nevada. We lived out in a small town of Dayton, and then we moved to Las Vegas, lived there for quite a few years till about the 9th grade. There was a shooting at the local high school, and parents were like, well, maybe we need to move more rural. We moved us up to a small town up in Idaho. We lived there. Well, I lived there a couple of years, and I ended up going back to live with my grandparents in Carson City, Nevada, because I was racing on the weekends. My grandfather owned a shop, and he used car lots, so we did a lot of, that Saturday night racing. And then,
what kind of racing?
What's that?
What were you racing?
We were racing like a bomber class, like a street class, quarter-mile paved track.
Very nice.
So, my senior year, I was working at Walmart, and around the end of the year, a recruiter ended up coming in while I was working. He asked me, he said, "You know what uniform I'm wearing?" Mind, I've watched all the movies, but I didn't know any of the dress uniforms. I just kind of looked at him and said, "Air Force." And he just like looked at me, he's like, it's like, "No, it's Marine Corps." I go, "Oh, it's like I was working. I didn't know anything." I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, I'd like to talk to you. Come in, maybe the Marine Corps could do something for you." I said, "Yeah, okay." He gave me a card, and then I just went down and I showed up, and he's like, "I didn't think you're going to show up." And I told him, I said, "Hey, I don't want to be a grunt.
Yeah.
I want to do something cool, but all that Rambo stuff doesn't look like, it looks cool, but it doesn't look fun." He goes, "We got the perfect thing for you. We got a thing called..."
Yeah, absolutely.
We got security forces. And anybody knows security forces is like a CMOS, a BMOS. It's a secondary MOS. And until I got to boot camp, I thought that was my job. Come to find out, I was in 0311. And I was going to go do it,
Oh, nice.
So yeah. In boot camp, you found out, hey, I'm a 0300. And I'm not security forces. I'm 0300. The cool thing is when I went back, before I went in, I went back to see one of my buddies up in Idaho, and he came down. He actually enlisted with me, so I got to go to the boot camp in the buddy program. It was kind of funny because I know you guys said, hey, you try to stand next to your buddy and find your buddy on one of your previous podcasts and you can't find him because everybody's head shaved.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but our last names were pretty close together. So I went up and said, hey, these guys are offering this. And he's like, cool, I'm down. He didn't know much about the Marine Corps himself. And so we shipped off together. We shipped out of Oakland because when I went in, they didn't have MEPS down in Las Vegas, so I went in Car City. So the only MEPS station was Oakland, California.
Wow.
So we got to go over to Oakland, and then we shipped out. We flew from Oakland down to LA, and I think they put us on another flight down to. No, I think we got picked up in LA, and we bus rode from LA down.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
But it might have been San Diego because it was real quick,
Oh, okay.
We're talking 28 years ago.
Yeah, it was a hot minute ago.
So we boot camp, it's pretty standard. We didn't have any crazy drill instructors or anybody that did anything crazy with us. Everybody has their own version of it. One interesting thing is my senior drill instructor later on life will come back and be the command sergeant major for one of the commands I was in. And it was like a lot later, like when I'm getting ready to retire.
Wow. That's wild.
It was wild. You just to see him, you're a gunner sergeant, you see your senior drill instructor, and you're still like, around.
Yeah. For sure, man. Always fun. What was his name?
Sergeant Major Sereno.
Oh, Sereno. Okay.
He's a really good guy. I guess he had some other personal things. Is the only reason he didn't go all the way up to a general sergeant major.
Okay. Huh. That's interesting. Well, so after boot camp, you went to School of Infantry then because you're 03. And what did you end up being, a rifleman or what? Was
a rifleman. So I did the recruiter's assistance.
Okay.
Showed back up to Camp Pendleton to do the School of Infantry, our ITB, and had to do MCT maintenance for 2 weeks. So I got to hang out in the old huts.
Yeah, those are the huts that. What movie was it that they recorded out there?
Heartbreak Ridge.
Yeah, Heartbreak Ridge. Those huts.
Yeah, those huts. That's when they before they built all those barracks out there where the staff academy is now. All those were all huts.
Yeah, I remember that. That's wild. Yeah. So you got to live like they did in the movie. And did you have a gunny highway that came in and was very similar to that?
No, we just it was one of the companies that he would just be like, hey, what are you guys doing today? Go do this. And we were pretty free to do what we want. I was really surprised at the time. And then one day they come in and say, hey, you're picking up, grab all your stuff, go over here. And that's when, it all started again. So we just showed up, the 0300 package. And then they go through and they say, hey, put down your wish list of 3 things you want to be. You want to be a mortarman, you want to be a machine gunner. I think LAV, they call it something different now. It was LAV then. Mm-hmm. At first I think I put something like tow missileman. And they asked me why you want to do that. And I said, because I don't want to hump. They kind of laughed. They got a chuckle. Because, I was only like 110 pounds then.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I get that's a rough go, man, humping with all that gear and being 110. I mean, how much weight was in the gear?
Between 65 to 80 pounds. I mean, each time. And, I did there's a few times I had to be the assistant machine gunner and carrying a barrel. And I thought that was bad enough. I did. I tried to carry a 240 one time for 5 miles back. I think I made it maybe 2 miles into it. And I was like, man, this is killing me. You
I
know,
can see.
when you're young, you try to be hard. You try to, test your limits, but there is limits to people.
That is true. Yeah, very true. Wow. So you put your three wish list down, and how did they pick you? Like, how did they determine where you went?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it was all the tests of everything, and then the needs of the Marine Corps. And they needed more. And since I was security forces, they just put me through the 0311 packages real quick.
Yeah. And then, and how long was that?
How was it? We got there probably January of '96. I think it's like 5 or 6 weeks long. It
Okay.
wasn't. I mean, it's longer than the 2 weeks of MCT,
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I got. Yeah.
but it was a little bit longer than you do like 2 weeks of 0300 package, and I think you do 5 or 6 weeks of the 0311 package.
I got you. Okay. Wow. And what were some of the things you remember as you were going through that?
I just remember, shoot, it seemed like we're out in the field all the time. You come back, you come back in the weekends, and you go bar hopping because that's when '96 you could still drink on the military base. You couldn't drink out in town, so the drinking age for beer was 18. It wasn't 21. So
No,
you go to the E Club right there. I don't know if you went East Coast or West Coast.
West Coast. Yeah.
So the West Coast, right there, they had the E Club. They would bring people in. They'd bring bands in. They'd bring the Budweiser truck in during the Marine Corps birthday.
Wow.
And they got the taps on the side. You just get your beer, pitchers, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
other times if you had time, you go out over to what's that base right across the bridge of Camp Pendleton right there? Del Mar.
Oh, Del Mar. Yeah.
Del Mar used to have the double club with two different dance floors.
Hmm.
And if you got adventurous, you go down to what was it? Trying to remember the names of all these places. 32nd Street.
Oh, down
Or,
in San Diego.
or you go down to also North Island used to have a club that
Oh, yeah.
people would go to. They've ripped them all down since. And MCRD used to have that club right there by the gas station.
Yeah. 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 You're right. Yeah.
I mean, after they changed the age, I think it became a furniture store. Then they tore it down years later.
Wow.
But that's what the grunts did because the guys at MCT, they'd just go 2 weeks and they'd fly out, or you were there, you're stuck.
Yeah. Hmm.
It takes you back to your old phone calls because no cell phones. I had to wait
Oh, yeah.
to talk at the I don't know what they call it, a phone
The
gather.
phone. Yeah,
Phone.
there was that whole area had like probably about 15, 20 payphones or whatever, and you had to go and wait in line, and then you can put your quarters in or what have you, or maybe you had the little card, whatever, you had to type in your number.
Yeah, everybody had calling cards, AT&T calling cards.
Yeah.
They also had the pizza place right down the road too.
Yeah.
I think it was a Domino's now, but it used to be just some personal pizza place everybody go to and get a slice.
I don't remember what it was, to be honest with you. I do remember getting pizza though.
Yeah.
That's man. Wow. All right, so you did the 0311 package, a lot of hiking, with heavy gear, obviously, and then at that point, where did you go? You went security forces. So did you come out to Virginia?
I did. I went out to Chesapeake.
Okay.
It was not Dam Neck, it's the other base out there, where they do the intel training. I'm trying to remember the name.
Oh, Dam Neck.
Dam Neck.
Yeah.
So that's where they send all the security forces. So we did I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks there. It might be shorter. I'm trying to remember. But you get there, you get a class of West Coast, East Coast, and they give you like 4 NCOs that are also going through the course.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
For the NCOs, it would have been their B billets. For us, it was just like a C billet. It didn't actually count as a C billet.
Okay. So for the NCOs that came back, was that any MOS at that point, or was that specific 03?
as I remember, one was a combat engineer, one was a Hawk missileman.
Wow.
We try to think. And some of them were O3s, but those, like when I got to my fleet, that's what the ones that were there were. One was a Stinger, one was a Hawk, and then one was a combat engineer.
Wow. That's a cool combination. Yeah. So what was that school like for you? Was it pretty intense or?
It was not bad. There was a lot of stuff that you had to remember verbatim there, kind of like drill sergeant school where you had to regurgitate verbatim stuff. Like, you had to have, the escalations of force. You had to know what deadly force is, and you had to know the verbatim definition as the Marine Corps sees it. Big thing is a lot of anti-security or anti-terrorism.
Mhm.
So you watch a lot of anti-terrorism, how to make yourself a non-target, how people make themselves a target and how not to be a target, and what different levels of terrorism look like. We got pistol qualled, shotgun qualled, and then how to stand a post.
Yeah. Wow. And now, as security forces, there's several different things that you can do in security forces, right? So there's security like securing like a nuclear sub base type of deal. That's part of security forces, right?
Yeah, they had the PRP commands. PRP commands were anything dealing with nuclear material or bombs, missiles. And then they had
Right.
FAST, Fleet Anti-Terror Security Team.
What was that?
Fast Company.
Yeah.
Fast Company would be the one to go and resecure or reinforce embassies. And they also had, I think they had a couple overseas billets. They weren't quite, what's that?
There's one in Rota, Spain. Is that one of the places?
Yeah, they had like Rota, Spain, Diego Garcia. They used to have a London one. They weren't quite. What was it? Security guard or security duty? What's that other B billet they got out there?
MSG.
Yeah, it wasn't quite MSG, but it was kind of along those lines of they get suits and they still stand a post.
Yeah. Wow. So which one did you end up doing?
I ended up with the Marine detachment. It was Mardet.
Where?
So I got.
Really?
Yes. So I got stationed on a ship.
Okay, which ship was it?
So the first ship was the USS America. It just came back from its deployment, and it was decommissioning. So I was only on there for about 3 weeks, and the John C. Stennis just got commissioned. It was in Norfolk, and we pretty much walked down the brow of the USS America and walked right up the brow of the John C. Stennis and stood it up.
Wow.
The ship hadn't even been commissioned yet. It was still going through trials. So most of the people on the ship never seen.
You were literally right. Yeah.
What's that?
Go ahead, say it again.
Oh, most of the Navy personnel didn't know Marines were on the ships.
No kidding. Wow.
But all the carriers at that time, all the carriers had a Marine detachment on board.
And then what was your responsibilities as the Marine detachment on board?
We had 2 posts that we constantly manned. One was the officer's brow, and the other one was the our secure locker. We had a like a security desk.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up just being like a big fire watch.
Oh, okay.
So you'd stand, like our duties, we would do a day and a half on, a day and a half off, or we would do, one day on, 1 day training, and then 2 days off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, when you're on, you might
also, were you guys also do security for, or kind of like the brig type of thing, if they needed that?
we didn't do the brig, but we also did our mission was like we had to secure magazines like on the carrier. When I say magazines, that's where they store the ammunition or the missiles. We'd have to
Right.
go down there and secure them, like if someone got in them. So we did a lot of CQB training.
Okay.
So we would like we'd go out to Newport News where they had the reserve fleet of ships that were just off-balled, and we'd do training out there of boarding them, securing the bridge, securing the engines. We'd use simulations and shoot each other.
How was that? I'm sure that
Okay.
was fun.
Well, it was fun, but it also hurt. Simulations hurt.
Yeah. I imagine so.
But
Don't
that's
want
not.
to get shot.
Oh no, that's something else you did in security forces. You did a lot of close quarter combat training.
Oh yeah, I can see it. Sure. And then what were like how long did you do that? Was it like 3 years? What, something
It
like
was
that? Or
for me. It was only about a year and about 18 months, maybe a little over a year and a half, because they at the end part of it they started shutting down all the Marine detachments. Unless that ship was about to deploy, they were shutting them down.
oh,
They're
that's interesting.
they're decommissioning all of them.
Wow. And then so at that point, you were still security forces, and did you go somewhere else or do something different?
So when they shut us down at first, I went to Yorktown, Virginia. Yorktown, Virginia was a PRP command at one time. They had shut it down, and they were standing up Fast Company 2.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Now out there, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where they would have the evening colors or whatever, and the band would come out and perform at those. Did you ever do those?
we did Sunset Day parades, but they're all at Norfolk. At Norfolk, Virginia is where Security Force Battalion is.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they did it in Norfolk.
So that's
I
where
think it switched up.
It might have changed now.
I don't even think they do them anymore, to be honest with you. I think all that went away. But that's interesting. So how was Fast Company? Or once you got into Fast, what were some?
So when I got over there, I didn't actually do the setup. By that time, I'd got orders to go to 1-6 in Lejeune.
Okay.
So I missed
Nice.
some of the fun. Some of our guys stayed and finished out their full 2 years, 2.5 years. But most of us, because they already had a company of Marines there, and then you had all these other Marines coming in. A lot of them they're just cutting orders to them.
Wow. And then so you went 6 Marines down at Lejeune, and how was that? Because that's a pretty prestigious battalion and stuff that's down there, a regiment. So how was that for you?
Coming from a security force background, and by this time I'm a corporal, I was behind the curve. Mm-hmm. Just because you got these guys that from the time they graduate, they're doing all that ground training. For me, we are corporals and they're lance corporals, and they knew twice as much as us, and we knew it. And then they try to put us in the leadership billet, trying to tell these guys how to do their job. Some guys struggled a little bit more, and it took a little while to catch on to
Oh, I'm sure.
writing the orders and getting everything up to speed. And it took a little while, but I went
That's right for sure. Challenge.
So when I got there, they
said that's.
You keep breaking up.
Yeah, sorry, man. We're kind of off a little bit, but that's a huge leadership challenge, though. As a corporal coming in, and the lance corporals and stuff, knowing more than you guys. How was that for you as far as dealing with that?
It took some adjustment because you have to know that you're still a corporal, but you still have to know what you know. At the end of the day, you got to be humble and listen to somebody. Yeah. If you're not humble, on the ground side, they'll run you over. They don't care if you want to impose rank over knowledge. They'll let you fall on your sword, as the saying goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Wow. And then so that was what area was that at Lejeune?
It was
Where did you guys reside?
off of H Street, back behind the I think it's the
Okay.
kind of over there by the staff club behind it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
People,
Yeah.
whatever it was called, I can't remember the exact name of the place.
Okay. Yeah. I've been there once or twice, or that area once or twice. So that's good.
Yeah,
And then
have it.
what were some things you remember specifically about being with Six Marines? Like, what kind of things were you doing there?
So we had mess night. We had a great first sergeant at the time. I can't remember his name. I was in first platoon Bravo Company when I was there. But I also, I went to infantry squad leaders course while I was there as a corporal and passed. I said
Nice.
passed. Well, some people don't pass their first time just because of the way the op orders that you have to write, the field time you do out there, and just the intensity of learning all the weapon systems. Because when you're in sergeant's course, you still shoot. You shoot the mortar out there. You shoot all the heavy machine guns. The Mark 19s.
Right. Yeah.
And then shortly after I finished that course, I went over and I did assault climbers course. So that was an intense course.
Where was that at? Where was that course?
That course was what's the name of that range? That range that's out there in Lejeune. I'm not 100% remember all the.
It was on Lejeune. No?
Is it? Yeah, it was on the backside over there by the range. It was done by SOTG at the time. I don't know what they call it now.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it was you kind of had to go south of the base, right, and then go out and then come back in another area. I don't remember what it was called though.
But I remember that's where they had the rifle range out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's still out there. Only thing I can think of is Edson, because I lived by that, many a time. So that's wrong coast.
Yeah, I have familiar things. I still have my cover from Edson Range. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Where I took that round.
Still have it. Huh? Yeah. That's good stuff. Yeah, we'll have to tell that story. But yeah, all right. What else? So you went to the assault course, and then what else? What else you got going on there?
So the assault climbers course was pretty much just a PT academy. So some people, because we're a boat company, so a lot of guys end up becoming coxswains, and do the boat things. But we went over and become assault climbers for the pretty much for the battalion. Because so we had recon guys and we had us, and it was one that you had to pass out a climb. You had to run, under certain, you had to do certain amount of pull-ups. And a lot of guys dropped. And it was, pretty much they taught us how to climb rocks. And different rocks. So we did that for, was it 3 weeks? And then we got on they sent us up to West Virginia, up toward Morgantown, West Virginia. And we spent another 2 weeks up there. And then our company did a dead up there. And we traversed them down the hill and built rope bridges and everything.
Wow, that's really cool.
So it was rappelling, climbing. We actually had to, pass out what was it, a six pitch climb? I might have some of my terminology wrong, but
yeah. How many pitches are there?
I don't know exactly. I think it's graded like a scale of 1 to 8 or 1 to 10.
Wow.
But the thing is, we had to do it with.
So 6 is.
No, it wasn't easy, and we had to pass out a night climb, a day climb. So we just it was just the difficulty of the climb had to be within that certain point, and you had to do it with combat boots on. So it wasn't like Like you had actual climbing shoes.
You don't have the cool grippy climbing shoes where you can put your toes in different things. You had to do it with your boots.
Yes.
That's a good time. Wow. And then did you now I know you get sent to these schools sometimes, but did you utilize that at some point in time throughout your career? Or
The only time we utilized it, so while I was with 1-6, I did do a med cruise with them. And we did a lot of live fire. Like our platoon, our company commander was all about, range close everything. So we would shift fire on live fires and go through live fires. He'd throw grenades and show us how if you're lower than them, you're not going to get hurt. Like they're a little bit,
wow.
but
Wow.
we were in Spain, outside of Malaga, Spain, and we were doing joint ops with the whatever the Spain army was at that time. We set up some rappel stuff and some different climbing things for one of our exercises while we were out there.
Very cool. And then, so when you were on that deployment, that was like 6-month type of deployment, or what?
Yeah, it was a full 6-month deployment. It was the end of 98 to 99. Deployment started out pretty well. We just hit different ports, and then Kosovo kicked off, and we went over there and did circles, got on helicopters, got back off helicopters, never really went in. The SEAL team that was on our ship, they went in, but we got to watch them shoot in a bunch of missiles.
Nice. I'm sure that's an interesting thing to watch, though.
Oh yeah, because we're out, you're out in the ocean with all these other ships around, and then all you see is them start shooting them off.
Wow. How many do you think they shot off?
I think they shot over hundreds of them.
No kidding. Wow. That's amazing. Wow. That's actually really cool. So what, and you say you did not go into Kosovo or anything?
We didn't actually step ground. I mean, some people in our company might have, but our me being in first platoon, we didn't. I mean, we were packed up ready to go, but we weren't on the main ship either. We were on one of the smaller ships.
Oh, I see.
I think the main ship was the Kearsarge at the time.
Okay. So you've done quite a bit so far in your career up to this point. You've done quite a bit on the on ships.
Yeah, I got two deployment. I got ship time, and then I got deployment time.
Yeah, not a lot of people get that experience for sure. I never got that experience. Of course, now I wasn't infantry, but I never got the experience of being on ship and stuff. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I never got it.
I got more ship time coming.
Oh, okay.
I got over a deployment time of ship time.
Wow. Well, that's fun. Yeah. So, okay, you do the deployment with 6 Marines, and at this point, what are you, corporal sergeant?
By the time we deployed, I picked up sergeant. And it's kind of funny because
so you're
as a sergeant, and I just toward the middle of the deployment, I put in for reenlistment for a lat move because there wasn't, in 89 or 98, 99, there wasn't much going on the ground side. So it was a whole lot of training and sitting around. As work goes, you might, ground side is kind of like you go in Monday, you come back Friday like a job. And so you spend your, Friday, you get home, you shower, sleep until Saturday afternoon, clean your gear, eat. And Sunday, you start getting ready to go back out to the field again to do some other train op. And Friday, if you get home early because you don't spend, all day cleaning weapons that you didn't fire.
Yeah. That's the way it goes. I saw a meme just the other day. It talked about the worst thing to see when you get back from a field op, and it's the guy at the armory as he's passing that weapon off, because he's going to tell you, nope, go clean it. So I thought that was pretty funny.
So I didn't think that I was getting. I thought the schools were real great that I had taken, but the actual just the redundancy of what we were doing wasn't for me at the time. Everybody's a basic rifleman. Everybody does do the basic rifleman, and we're at the end of the day, most Marines feel like they're glorified janitors because they had so much downtime. There wasn't a lot, as grunts have a hard life, especially when it comes to any type of conflict. But when they're in garrison, there's a lot of downtime, and that's when they start inventing stuff and start getting in trouble and things like that. But I had lat moved. I'd put in different requests, so they end up sending me to headquarters platoon the second half of the deployment, and I would just do rosters and classes and stuff like that.
Okay. And what did you put in for? You said the lat move. What were you putting in for?
So I put in for like airframes and flight equipment, and I think I put in for a mech.
Okay.
And the only thing I knew about the one I got is my brother had a couple buddies that were already in the Air Wing, and they said, "Hey, this is the one you want to do." And for the reasons I picked it, I didn't know anything about it, but I picked it. I said, "Hey, something's better than nothing."
It makes sense.
And me being a sergeant already, I was like, I already felt like I was ahead of the curve because I'm not sure what year you came in, but when I came in 95, everybody that was getting out at their 4 year was corporals. And they used to call it like a mercy corporal because they get promoted to corporal, a month or two before they get out.
Oh, wow.
So my goal was always to be like, hey, I just want to become a corporal before I get out. And
yeah,
here I am at the end of 4 years as a sergeant already. And I was like, this ain't a bad deal. and the time that I had in security forces, trumped anything bad that was, in the 1-6. 1-6, there's a lot of good times, but there's also a lot of tough times.
Yeah.
Because it's not so much the Marine Corps, it's more the people that run it where you're at. And I think that has to do with every aspect of life at the end of the day. But it was
yeah, that's very true.
Like I know one or two people maybe from 1-6, but I know the whole crew from when I was in security forces.
Wow.
But we are a small
planet.
There's only like 12 of us.
Yeah, but you guys were tight.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So then you get picked up for the lat move, right?
Yep.
So where did you go then?
I got picked up for a flight equipment technician. It was 60-60 then. Now it's a 60-48. And they sent me to Pensacola to go to A school.
Nice. That's not a bad place to go.
I thought it was great until I got there. Then I was like, they wanted us to run PFTs every Friday. And they kept talking about our physical fitness. I didn't realize I just came off the boat, being on the boat for 6 months. You don't do a lot of running on the boat. You don't do a lot of PT on the boat.
Not a lot.
I mean, you can go to the gym, lift weights or whatever, run treadmill, but on the smaller boats, treadmill running is not that it's not like running on a treadmill on a carrier.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Holy cow.
Not to mention, I got there in July in Pensacola.
Oof. What a time to get there. Holy, that's right at the peak of their summer season, right?
Yeah, I was there, July, August, and I think I left out in September or October.
So it was probably just still hot then.
Oh, it was cooking down there. I remember I I'd never been to Florida before this, and especially not down toward the Gulf. And I've been some warm places, but the Med Cruise is pretty much, it's not a real hot time, like
Right.
weather wise and humidity wise. And I got down there and I was like, just walking from like the barracks to I stayed in more permanent personnel because I was already a sergeant. I wasn't a student. Well, I was a student, but not with the Lance Corporals and PFCs.
Right.
I just remember walking to the classroom, just going like, "Oh, damn, I'm dying." The PT be ran 5 a.m. because
Yeah.
that was hot. So my first one, I barely passed it, and it wasn't because I was out of shape. It's just because I wasn't used to the humidity.
Oh yeah.
I hit the halfway point, I think under 10 minutes. I turned around, I couldn't breathe. Just because how thick the air was and the humidity.
Wow.
I remember that pretty
Well, I
clear.
always remember you were a pretty good runner from what I remember. So
Yeah, I always did pretty decent in running PT because, between the ranks of PFC to a sergeant, that's all they care about. Look good in uniform and can you PT? You do those two things, you're going to get
right. Yeah, that's true. But it's amazing how some people struggle with that.
So I just remember that very first, PFT that, it wasn't scored, but you didn't want to fail it either. So I found myself just kind of trying to jog back and try to breathe. But by the time the end of school, I was beating all the I was beating all the the PFCs and Lance Corporals that were in the class.
Very nice. And then how long was that school?
I think it was a total of 5 weeks long total.
Was it difficult for you?
No, it wasn't. The school wasn't hard. It was just,
Wow.
the instructors would want to joke with you, and I was still under the grunt mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I say that with the the best of intentions, but grunts and air wingers and everybody else, they kind of have different mentalities at the end of the day. And grunts were very, very professional, like to the point. There was no like joking around. And I didn't see it much when
Right.
I went to the school. It's when I first got to my first Air Wing command. And I didn't go to a Marine Corps Air Command after I graduated the school. I went to Whidbey Island, Washington, to a EA-6B training squadron, VAQ 129.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a majority Navy command with a Marine XO and Marines mixed in because Marines were flying prowlers out of Cherry Point, and all the Navy prowlers were right there in Whidbey Island.
So that's where all the Marines went to train then.
So that's where all the Marine pilots went to train.
Right. Yeah. Wow. And what were you doing when you were there? You're just working on the aircraft at that point for the training squadron?
So my job is anything a pilot would wear that was safety gear, from their flight suits to ejection harnesses to survival gear, radios, and all that. That was my responsibility, or the responsibility of the shop, to maintain, because everything's on a cycle, from their LPUs or their life preservers to their torso harnesses to their survival vests. Everything's on some type of inspection cycle. Like masks have to be inspected every 30 days. Ejection harnesses are every 90 days. Vests are every 90 days. And then they might have a 180-day and a 360-day inspection on them too.
Wow. I will say, at least from my experience, going from more of the ground side, that's all the units I was at until I finally got stationed at an air wing. I could not believe the amount of inspections and I guess the importance put on that. It seemed like everything they did was to pass an inspection. It was amazing to me. I just couldn't believe it. It was wild.
Yeah, because they have CNAP. They have they have CNAP inspection, they have MALS inspection, and they have the internal inspections of programs. And you know, one thing people don't see is the hours they work on the air wing side. They work some hours. And, you know, if the aircraft aren't up, they're working 12 on, 12 off. And when they're on deployments, that, you know, it's not like the ground side. You're on deployment, you get up, you do a couple classes, you watch TV. You're off on Sundays. You know, on Sundays, I remember guys, you know, they'd have like 10 guys sitting around a table watching, you know, a 20-inch, 18-inch screen TV.
Wow. Holy cow. And but not the air wingers, they're working.
Yeah, they 7 days a week. They
Yeah.
might start an hour later, but it's 12 on, 12 off. So your night crew or day crew.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when you're working that 12-hour shift, if not everything got completed, you're staying beyond that, correct?
A lot of people do stay on because, you know, like I ran a small shop. Not well, farther along in my career, you know, I was a staff NCO, and you run a shop, so you'd have you and two guys, and then you might have, you know, two guys or three guys come in at the point. Not everybody's like, well, I guess my 12-hour shifts, you know, where are you gonna go?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, sometimes, you know, they want to play Xbox, but you know, you get a shower and go back to your, you know, berthing. There's not a lot to do in berthing besides shenanigans and watch TV. But my time up there with the Navy was pretty good, and we had a thing is we would do they do carrier quals, so we do a lot of San Diego debts, and everybody in the shop is I had more sea time than they did. And they're in the Navy, so I said, well, you guys need to go to the ship. So we'd send in the ship, but it was good that I had went there before I actually went to a command, because a training command does twice the amount of gear as a normal squadron does. So I had a chance, you know, to maintain 250 sets of gear. So I learned the gear relatively very fast because I wasn't the guy in charge. You know, I wasn't the guy on the low totem pole, but it gave me a chance to learn the gear, not to go in and just say, hey, I'm the boss, you know, do this, that. I got to learn the gear. I got to learn the programs of how it works. So it worked out really well there. And it was great command. Actually, it was the Squadron Marine of the Year in 99, I think it was, or 2000. Maybe it was 2000. I was the Marine of the Year there for the squadron.
Wow. That's awesome. Now, was it Marine and then Sailor of the Year? Or was it two different things, or did they combine them into one?
No, it was two different ones. I was just for the Marine unit that was there at that squadron.
Gotcha.
And then I went up to the mag level. I think I got second place because I lost because I didn't have community service like the other guy did.
Yeah. There's always something that got to look out for, right? The extra, got to go that extra mile, if you will.
Yeah, it was funny because they had gave it to a civilian panel to vote on us, I guess, for some reason, and the guy that because I guess they were sponsoring it or something.
Interesting.
It was an outside source because my community service was, you know, we went downtown Oak Harbor and helped set up the Christmas lights and stuff like that.
Right.
And he was actually a PRP, like an overweight Marine at the time. And the CO was kind of mad.
Wow.
It's so stupid, easy little things you remember.
That's crazy. So the overweight Marine was the one that won, who was going out and doing all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, at that time I had little kids too, so I didn't have a lot of time to, you know, when you are home, not to be home.
Oh yeah. So you had how many kids at this point?
I had two by that time.
Kids.
I had two, and then I might have had the third one already.
Wow.
The third one on the way. I only had at that time three, and yeah, they're young. like
Yeah.
babies, because two of them were born there in Whidbey Island.
Oh, wow. So you met your wife then? Was it before you got there?
Yeah. I was married before I got there.
Okay.
I got married in security force school.
Oh, okay.
Or
So
not
fairly early.
security. Why I was in my security force command, I got married.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then, so at this point, 3 kids. So your time is spent going home being daddy. And
Yeah.
that to me, and I say hats off to you because I started being a daddy a little later in life, and it's rough. It's a rough go. So I can't imagine doing it. Being young, young sergeant, not making as much money. Uh, it had to been a little bit of struggle at times.
Oh, yeah, we were living in a base housing, the base,
Yeah.
the bills where you're like, well, we gotta buy food, we gotta pay this and this, and then how much we got left over? Oh, you got $150 a week or two. You're like, oh, great.
Yeah. If you get something more than beans and taters, you're doing pretty good. So
Yeah.
very nice. So how long were you up at Whidbey Island?
I was there almost 4 years, pretty
Oh,
much from
wow. Okay.
what was it, the end of '99 till almost 2003 or late 2002. I picked up
Okay.
staff.
So you were
I
there
picked up staff sergeant while I was there.
September 11th. You were there for September 11th.
I was, and it's kind of interesting because I was actually on a detachment to San Diego when it happened.
Oh, okay.
So we were we were at the hotel because they put us in a hotel, and then because we would maintain any aircraft that would come back that could, like, if they couldn't land on the ship because that's where they do their carrier quals while they're in the school, they couldn't land on the
Mhm.
ship. They'd come back to North Island and we'd catch them there. So
Okay.
we would stay in Mission Valley when we go down debts down there.
Mhm.
90% of the time, later on as time went and budgets changed, they started putting us in like the BEQs over there in North Island. But at the beginning, everything was right there in San Diego, right there in Mission Valley area. So,
Right.
the weekend hit Saturday night when they're not flying on the boat, you'd be downtown San Diego. Drink.
Mhm. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. You got to do something.
Oh yeah. So it hit. They came and woke us all up. We were watching the TV, and then boom, we watched the second one hit, and it was the first time you ever seen like California just stop. Like there's no cars going. Everybody, like, nobody's going anywhere. There's no planes flying out or overhead. And they said, "Hey, we got to do this, this." Next thing you know, we're turning in vehicles, and they're like, "We can't fly you guys home. We don't know how to get you guys home." They end up giving us a bus. We end up riding a bus from San Diego all the way up to Whidbey Island. I'm not sure you know
No.
where Whidbey is. Whidbey Island is above Seattle.
Yeah. That's a long haul. How
So
long did it take you to go San Diego all the way up to Whidbey Island?
I think it was like over
It
24
was
hours.
over a day.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was over a day. It's like you trying to sleep on a bus. And I just remember the time. It was like the bus was nice, and by the end, it smelled like a Tijuana factory. Yeah, I remember the snacks. I remember us stopping a couple times. One was to stop at like Golden Corral, and then stop somewhere else. But they pushed. I mean, they pretty much, it drove nonstop. Like they drove, like 12 hours and switched bus drivers and finished us. Dropped us off. And I remember how the bases were shut down. Only certain personnel could get on base, and they had off-site parking where they would bring buses out to pick people up. People would still try to get on base. Yeah. The lines would be so long because they wouldn't inspect every car going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. I was in 29 Palms when that happened. So I remember getting a phone call in the morning saying that it had happened. And I think I had just gotten back from a trip or something like that, and I was wore out. You know, we got back late the night before, and they told us that happened. It was actually my sister-in-law, and I was like, "Yeah, it didn't happen, whatever," you know. And then my wife turned the news on. It's like, "Nope, it actually happened." So it was one of those surreal moments.
Yeah, it was definitely you just remember where you're at, what you're doing at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't know. You said they woke you up whenever all that happened as well.
Yeah,
'Cause we
yeah,
were-
because when you're on when we're on the detachment in San Diego, we usually don't run like 2 shifts or anything. And if we do, the shifts don't turn over like at 7, 7 to 7. It might be from 9 to 9, or it might have been the weekend. I can't remember what it was. What
Yeah.
day?
I think it. I don't know.
What happened on a Friday?
It might have been. I'll be honest. I don't know. I don't remember.
And well, I was still in the hotel room, and that's when they came and they got us all, and they wanted to do a muster, or a head count for everybody. And they're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we know what's going to happen. Stay by." Up to that time, none of us had cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone then.
Yeah.
I never, people started getting cell phones by that time, but I still had not. I still didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, I was the same way.
And I thought to myself, I said, this might be a good time to get a cell phone.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway because you couldn't make phone calls and all that stuff anyways when all that went down.
No, because all the systems were overloaded.
Yeah.
Before that,
Wow.
I'd been out to 29 Palms a couple times.
Just like flying in, flying out. Did you work on the expeditionary field down there?
So I went to, when I was with 1-6, we went to CAX out there.
Oh yeah.
I think they call it Mojave Viper now. And that was one of my interesting times with 1-6, because it rained and it was cold, and it was February when we went out there.
Yeah, you wouldn't think middle of the desert, cold. It gets cold.
And then I went to Sergeant's Course out there too.
A lot. Oh, did you? No, I didn't do so. I did Corporal's course out there. I didn't do Sergeant's course.
Yeah, 2000, I went to Sergeant's Course out there, because when I was still up there with Whidbey Island, that's where they would send us. So I got to do Sergeant's Course.
Wow, that's a long haul for Sergeant's course.
Sergeant's Course is interesting. Everybody try to go to Palm Springs on the weekend, and everybody else trying to go out in town on the Wednesday night or Thursday night. I can't remember what night it was. Everybody try to go out in town and do their thing.
Yeah. There was only like 2 or 3 bars you could go to. There wasn't a whole lot that you could go hang out at.
Yeah, I remember they had a restaurant that used to be a bank out there. I remember that.
There used to be a what?
A bank.
Oh, really? I don't remember that. Interesting. I'll have to look that up. That's crazy.
I was gonna say, when you're on detachments or many deployments, you usually find out most places that are out there more than the locals do sometimes, because you're out there looking for them.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I just hung out at my house. I lived on. I was in the non-NCO housing at the time on 29 Palms, which was the. It used to be some sort of landfill, and then they built houses over it. So apparently it was contaminated at one point in time. They have since shut down all those houses, but I think they tore them all down and redid everything out there. But yeah, it was the ghetto back in the day.
Did you have to rake your yard? I heard about that. 29 Palms, where they had to rake the.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, I remember at work you'd have to spray the sand, then you rake the sand, and you had to be perfect lines, right? And then and if the CG happened to come around and your sand wasn't perfectly raked, he would get upset. Yeah. That was the good old times back then. The Marines think they have it rough now. I have no idea.
I remember that raking. I also remember that I can't remember who the sergeant major was at the base, but he would hang out at the PX, make sure everybody had their shirts tucked in, belts, proper civilian attire. And I was like,
Yeah.
this guy gets paid to do this. You know, is that
It literally did. Yeah,
were
those
they,
were good times.
they would send civilians away if they didn't meet the
Yeah, it was rough back then. You had to make sure you had your shirt tucked in, and it's a rough go. But these poor guys nowadays, these days don't understand. Yeah. All right, so you're at Woodby Island, and you said you picked up staff sergeant while you were at Woodby Island.
I did.
So at that point, assuming because you picked up staff sergeant, you're probably going to move you.
Yeah, it was coming toward the end of the 4 year, anyways. I think I'd been in over. I'm coming in 8 years, 9 years in the Marine Corps by then. So,
and then where did they try to send you?
I got sent down to Miramar.
Okay.
To,
nice. What you?
VMFA 323 Death Rattlers, F-18 unit.
Okay. Nice.
So one thing about air is mostly like airframers on the Marine Corps side. Airframers, all the comm nav guys, airframers, power plants. They stay in the same platform. So anybody that I was with at Whidbey Island, as Marine wise, most of them all went to Cherry Point. Like when they rotate, they go from Cherry Point to Whidbey Island back to Cherry Point. For me being a flight equipment, I can work all platforms. So I get sent to F-18 platform. Gears pretty much the same, but what we maintain on the aircraft is different. I didn't know how to, a prowler. I could raise the canopies, lower the canopies, get in there, inspect the parachutes, the seat pans, and stuff like that. I get out there and I start learning the F-18. I was like, I don't know. I don't even know how to open the canopy. They always thought that was funny because I was like, I don't even know how to open the canopy. I can inspect the gear because the gears, it's different, but it's the same. Like the Sea Whizzes or the Sea Wars. Sea Wars are just stuff that connect to the harness that when it gets seawater, it pops a CAD and it separates the person from the parachute, so the parachute won't drag them down.
Yeah.
But you just test the voltage on it. All that's pretty much the same. You check oxygen levels on the seat pans for the emergency oxygen. You go out there to do it. You're like, I don't know. I don't know about this aircraft.
How do I get to it? Yeah, I can see how that could be a little challenging.
So there's a few things to learn gear wise, and as time goes, like the programs that we use changed. Like we used to use a lot of seat based a program. It's an old DOS style program. That's all went away. It all went to God, I'm trying to remember what the program is, but it changed like 3 times. By the time I left there to go to the drill field, when I came back, it had changed, once again. So it's like how you input the gear, how you track the gears kept changing. But
that's pretty wild because you say like when you went drill instructor, you're gone for 3 years, you come back, it's a completely new system. So you're back to I got to learn the system, figure all that stuff out. How does it work? All those types of things. I mean, you're starting over again.
Oh yeah. So I did 2 deployments with 323, and they're a carrier-based squadron. So our first deployment was around the world cruise on the Carl Vinson. So I got to do another 6.5 months on a carrier.
Nice.
And I think it was 2005, 2004, somewhere around that year.
Okay.
And then, I ended up back up on the Stennis in 2007 for Westpac.
Wow. Coming back around.
So
that's fun.
I mean, that doesn't count the time. Like they sent me up to Washington because they had moved the ship up to Washington. I rode it from Washington down to San Diego to prep for the squadron. That doesn't count all our workups because we'd still got on the carrier to do workups before deployment. So there's definitely some seat time on there. My first deployment was as a staff sergeant. You still had to eat in the General Pop chow halls.
Yeah.
but you just get to cut every other line. That you have like a first class line that just kind of gets in. But when you pick up gunny and you go on the boat, it's so much nicer. I mean, you get to go in the
Yeah.
Chiefs.
That whole,
You go in the Chiefs berthing area, bigger racks. You get wall locker, and then you get to eat in the Chiefs mess where you want to eat a grilled cheese sandwich, they cook you a grilled cheese sandwich. You want to eat a burger, or you could eat what's on the line. You didn't have to eat what they give you.
right. Yeah. And from what I hear, and I haven't experienced it, but from what I hear, it's the Chiefs mess is better than the officers mess, even like the Chiefs, because the Chiefs run everything in the Navy. So that's what I've heard. I don't know that for sure, but
Oh, they're very comparable, I would say, because a carrier. Well, I don't know about the smaller boats, but a carrier, it matters if the Chiefs. Someone said Chief Mafia the other day, but if the Chiefs actually put in for their thing, their mess pretty good because they got one Chiefs mess, and then they got two enlisted decks forward and aft. Like they got pretty much like a fast line, and then they got a main line, and then on top of that, they got two officers. I think it's two officers. They got like a main officer chow hall, and then they got like the augment everybody that comes on a carrier chow hall on a carrier because carriers,
oh, I see.
they got two ship stores on there. They got anywhere between 5,500 to 6,000 people on board.
That's more than my hometown.
Right.
It's huge.
So there's definitely a lot going on. That doesn't count, what's going on, in the hangar to what's going on upstairs. So I'm definitely I'm not a WOG. I'm a shellback. So I got to do my first I got to do my first deployment as a WOG to shellback, and they did a lot of interesting things. And then as a shellback training the WOGs, washing the dirty guys, the dirty scums or whatever they call it at the time, that's another thing that's very on the line of hazing, but it's also very monitored.
Yeah.
We're talking 2007. They've already had the big incidents of like 96 of the Anglo pinning on and things like that. But it was interesting. It was just let's say that our General Papa Marines berthing, they had some cleaning to do after we were done, but they all made it through.
Very nice. Oh man.
But it's one time they let you
Ed,
the elevators.
yeah, go ahead. They let you run the elevators, you said?
They let you ride the elevator, like you see in Top Gun, how he's standing on the elevator and it goes up to the
Oh
top.
yeah.
That's something that doesn't happen. Nobody ever rides the elevators.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
when you're doing the tradition of going over the equator, that was part of the transformation. You kind of go to your berthing down through the hangar. You go through. Most of the time, it was just mostly like PT moves, like side start hops, flutter kicks. And you go up. They might spray you down. You might have to go through a tub. You might have to go through a week's worth of kitchen remnants, or something that stinks that is nasty, jello, whatever they came up with. Like the first time they had just popped sea dye in water. That's bad enough because it'll dye you green. And the second time they actually put a bunch of messy, old food in there.
Yep. Those are the good times, huh?
It's just stuff that you go through, and the camaraderie of what people would consider borderline at the end, the end of any trialation, Marine Corps or the Navy. Everybody would high five and they'd have a barbecue, and you'd have a great day. Lay out the sun, because it turns into a steel beach party.
Yeah.
On the carrier of the boat, they call it a steel beach party. So, all the chiefs and, everybody, all the chiefs and a lot of the officers all barbecuing, most of the time that we did it, we've been out at sea for a little while. So, everybody gets their beer ticket and everybody gets one beer to drink. I didn't drink beers, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But it was a good time. Everybody had a good time. You know, you get back seriousness and start flying the next day.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Um, so, so you're at the Air Wing down at Miramar at this point. And how long were you there? Because I know you went drill instructor after that. So, and you picked up gunny. Correct me if I'm wrong. Before you went down.
Yeah, I picked it up right before I went down. I was like, if the only thing I'd ever change is I probably wouldn't have gone to the drill field as a gunner sergeant. So while at Miramar, yeah, I did get promoted, and before I got promoted, I ran the shop as you know the lead staff NCO, and then I got moved over to QA. I ended up becoming first a CDQAR, collateral duty inspector, you know, quality assurance representative for my gear in my shop, so I can. And then went over and I did time in QA and ended up becoming a full systems QAR, so I could inspect any shop. So I was airframes, you know, power plants. I think it was electric shop. So I can, you know, if they're installing something, I can go out and inspect. I can end up inspecting, you know, the drop rates of the landing gear and, you know, just installation of different parts and stuff like that. Like they install an engine, I could, you know, inspect the torques on a dog bone that holds it up.
Wow, that's wild.
So I'd end up becoming, you know, full systems QAR for the F-18.
Wow. And that's pretty incredible in my opinion. Like you're talking multi-million-dollar aircraft, and you can ensure by inspecting everything that and you're talking all the components to make sure that aircraft is flying. That's incredible, man.
Yeah, so any work that was done, I could go out and I could verify it and sign it off as, hey, they did it right.
Yeah.
I did it pretty much, I believe most of the second deployment, or did I go back to the shop for the second deployment? I was there a year. I was the QA chief for quite a while.
Yeah.
In 3.
Wow.
Actually, I didn't finish up there. I went to maintenance control. I forgot all about that. So when we deployed, you know, they had brought another guy in. I went back to the shop for a little while, and then they sent me over to maintenance control. And then I learned how to certify a jet safer flight. So I got my safer flight while I was over there, and, you know, was one of the maintenance controllers.
And what is that specifically? I'm not familiar with that.
So maintenance controllers, they facilitate the maintenance of what needs to be done to the aircraft that you have in your squadron, and then they assign the priorities. And a certain amount of gripes can down an aircraft, and what different variety of a gripe or a deficiency on an aircraft is can determine if it's a down gripe or an up gripe. So certain things that could be wrong, you can still drive it. Like if you have a bad windshield, it might down your car from driving, but if your windshield wiper was bad, you could still drive it.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that's just an example. Like, you know, now if your car was leaking oil, you could maybe still drive it, but if it was, you know, pouring out at a regular rate, you couldn't drive it. You know,
right.
So different gripes. You know, any safety things would down an aircraft. You know, there would be simple things like, you know, what the aircraft, you know, could utilize and not utilize for, you know, systems on board. And so you would facilitate, you know, a maintenance meeting. And then when I said safer flight's the big one, because that's the one where you go and you look at the books and you say, yes, this aircraft, I'm going to sign it saying, hey, you can take this aircraft and you can fly it. So you check the weights, you check, you know, the configuration of what's on it. Is there drop pods on it? Is it armed? And, you know, how much fuel does it have? And a pilot, he comes, looks at it, you know, you sign the book saying, hey, it's safe for flight for this flight. Pilot checks the book, he signs it, and then he can go fly it.
Wow. So I imagine that is pretty when you have that much on the line, multi-million-dollar aircraft, you have people flying it, their life is on the line type of deal. That's a pretty big responsibility. How did that work for you as you're going through, what was going through your mind as you're, okay, I got to make sure this is good to go? Because I'm sure you had seen individuals or heard of individuals that didn't do their job the right way and something happens on the back end. What goes through your mind for that?
Well, the good thing is most of the time, if you do your job wrong, it's caught just by the steps you have, because you still got to have a daily done on an aircraft, first of all. That's where the plane captain goes out, does his inspection, saying, hey, I didn't find anything new. The pilot didn't write up any new gripe. And then you look at aircraft hours, you look at aircraft engine hours, you make sure all inspections are met, and you don't skip any steps. And it's pretty it takes a while to get safer flight, because you actually have to show that you can do it. You just can't go in and, like, I probably couldn't do it today without getting training up to it, because you have to pass on a couple things, and they actually have to certify you for it. It's definitely by this time I know how important it is, because I've had a couple guys eject. I don't know. I know we hadn't covered it, but when I was in the training command at 129 Whidbey Island, we lost a jet there with guys that had my gear on them, and plus whatever they had done at AMD. That's what the Navy calls it, AMD. We call it MALS. It's their tradition to get a bottle. It's not so much about getting a bottle; it's more about them coming back. And I was surprised, because one of the guys that ejected ended up becoming a CO of one of the squadrons, and he ended up being I think he retired now, but what was his name? Major Cannon was his name, or he was Lieutenant Cannon then. And
Okay.
I didn't think much of it, but you go back and you're at a Marine ball, and he tells your significant other that you saved his life, and you're like, wow, that's pretty heavy, coming from it, thinking about it, because I had fit him for his ejection harness, not even a week before. It was his first flight in the aircraft, and he got ejected out the back seat.
Wow. So that just goes to show how important those checks and balances really are. Because if something does go wrong with the aircraft, you got to have that backup in order, so you get ejected. That's a big deal, man.
They lost one more aircraft there, and then they end up losing an aircraft or another one in Cherry Point. And I think out of the two that I know of, four of them had my gear on them. When I say two aircraft, they set four people in each aircraft for the Prowlers. So when they eject, there's four people in it. There's sometimes they have three. Like my first one was just three, but I think a total of four had gear that I had worked on, or gear I had certified safe for flight.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a lot to put on somebody, as far as the responsibility and those types of things. I don't know. I mean, I never had that kind of responsibility in a sense put on me. I'm sure it weighed heavy on you at some point in time.
The only time it really affects, if something happens and you don't know what happened, that makes any sense.
Yeah,
and that can mess with,
like,
not just
no explanation.
It doesn't mess so much with always you, but it affects the whole unit. Because my first deployment with VMFA 323, we lost our XO, and we lost our power plants officer to a phenomenal.
And when you
it was a a collection of different things that had happened. One is, the aircraft wired rusting gear, it went down or something. One of them had lost their refueler thing, and then they got caught in a sandstorm.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
the only reason I found out what the end income was is because I ended up having to go through the gear with a investigating officer.
Okay.
So the investigating officer just happened to be a prior enlisted flight equipment Marine.
Oh, wow.
So if there was anything, it wasn't like, we could hide anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how they exactly did fault, but he let us know that our job, everything worked on our side at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's the elements of weather that had affected both these pilots, because
Wow.
they didn't know if they ejected or not. They did eject, but being a sandstorm and not being able to see horizon,
Mhm.
because I don't know if you've ever been parachuting. You got risers that you can pull onto decelerate your speed.
Mhm.
They figured that if you hit the ground too hard, you can knock yourself out.
Yeah.
And you being in the desert with the wind blowing, you can kind of gather what kind of happened.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so I had to, and then going through their gear is very it's different, because you're going through the gear, inspecting it, make sure everything's right, but you got all this other gear that you got to bag up that you can't touch without gloves.
Right. I mean, because they're going to inspect all that stuff,
Oh, everything they can recover from the aircraft, everything they can recover that they're wearing, everything gets inspected.
Yeah. Wow. Like I said, it is amazing to me the amount of checks and balances that actually happen on the air wing side. And like I said, kudos to you guys, man. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I've had to do it one other time when I was in 129. One of the other squadrons lost a jet, and I had to go with the was it like the mag flight surgeon and go through all the gear. But when everybody comes home safe, it's not that bad. You go through it, you check it out, you're like, yeah, it's good, because they're not trying to blame anybody. They're trying to figure out just what happened, and if the gear works,
Right.
it's kind of just the checks and balances. They want to check what was it an O-ring in the engine that failed?
Right.
Now if there's a loss of life, then it's a whole lot different. You're really digging into exactly
Yeah.
what happened.
Wow. I mean, the ante is up quite a bit more whenever you think about that. You're talking about life lost. That's much, much bigger at that point. Although you're talking a multi-million-dollar aircraft as well. I'm sure that the taxpayers want to know what happened. But from a Marine standpoint, if it's a life loss, man, that's a completely different story.
Oh yeah. When you lose exceptionally a good Marine or Marines, and you're in a combat zone flying combat missions, and it's non-combat related, that's hard. At the end of the day, of
Yeah.
what caused this, and at the end of the day, I have an idea what happened, but it was an accident at the end of the day of a variety of events to the end result. And so now to go recover
Right.
it, they got to go in. They got to go in. I think it was over Iraq. Now they got to go in Iraq and try to recover these two Marines, these aircraft.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know. I don't ever think of it from that aspect. Like I said, I've been on the ground side most of the time, so I never really thought of it from that point of view, if you will. So it's definitely different.
Yeah, most of the time they can't recover the aircraft. They just blow them up.
Oh, really?
Well, in the in wartime or in a foreign country, like I think it was over in Iraq because they're going. Was it Bagram Air Base? That's
Yeah.
and that's I think that's where they diverted them to send them over there. But we lost two pilots and a crew chief. I'm trying to think. There's two pilots, a crew chief, and maybe one other. We lost them in a helo accident, you know.
Oh, wow.
So when you lose helo accident, you know, that's another thing. You got to find out where they're at, what happened, recover aircraft, and then you know they bring the aircraft back to the hangar. You talk about messing up a squadron. They see it mangled.
Yeah.
So everybody take, you know, they try to take their job as serious as you can. You know,
Yeah.
everybody thinks, you know, they fly, they do all these cool stuff, but you know, there's a lot into it.
You know, and you talk about individuals PTSD. I mean, most people are going to think about PTSD in an aspect of, you know, I'm an infantryman in combat type of thing. But you could take, I mean, if I'm in a squadron and my job is to work on that aircraft and then it comes back to me and it has crashed and you're seeing the results of what happened, that's a huge deal, man.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all kinds of tricks.
Yeah, I seen the wouldn't say I'm a super emotional person, but you go back and you see them do a memorial on a flight deck of a carrier, and then you see you know they put their names up on the carrier on the bridge, and how it affects like I had one guy that he's just distraught because he had been in the squadron, you know, that's the only squadron he'd ever been in at that time, and this guy had, you know, the XO at the time, you know, he'd become, you know, he had moved around, he had just getting ready to pick up lieutenant colonel, and you know, he was one of the guys that everybody knew. And then, you know, you send them out and they don't come back. You're like, you know, it's not as bad as, you know, seeing your buddy get his, you know, messed up beside you, but it's still the psychological that it messes up these guys. And then they bring out pictures of them, they put the boots up and the upside down and all that. It tears some people up pretty bad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to, you know, people should think about when they're talking about PTSD and those types of things. It's not necessarily always the I'm in the combat and you know, I'm getting fired at type of deal. You know, it could happen to anybody at that point in time. You know, you're seeing some crazy stuff. So
yeah, anything dramatic change in people's lives. You know, I've seen simple things where, you know, you go over to Afghanistan with a group, and within being there within 6 weeks, one of the master sergeants and one of the, you know, what was it, a master sergeant and a sergeant, they get blown up. And people had been, you know, you do a workup for, you know, 8 months with these people of doing all this different training, all this different work. And then they get in the country in less than a month in, they get blown up. And, you know, the report comes out saying, hey, they're in the wrong vehicle to be outside the wire. Because they're I think they're in a Humvee or they're in a Ranger, and they should have been in an MRAP.
I can see how that is mentally going to hurt, you know, stress people out and put them in that traumatic type of situation. That's wild. So let's go back to so you're at Miramar, picked up Gunny at this point. Now you have to figure out your next move, if you will. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is where you went drill instructor. Is that correct?
It is. That's where I went to the drill. You know,
nice.
What my expectations of it was, what it was, and what it became were all different. Because I talked, you know, you talk to people. Some people are like, you just got to be in great shape. You know, some people are like, the first couple of days is rough, but it comes gentleman's club. And then, I go to this company where they want to treat us and train us. And, looking back at it now, I'm like, the start of it was not good. I'm a grown ass man and you're trying to treat me like I've never been nowhere. I've never done anything. And I have to meet your standard, not the Marine Corps standard. I've already met the Marine Corps standard.
Mm-hmm.
And DI school, just the teach backs, just going through the teach backs, like I wouldn't say I have a bad memory. I wouldn't say I have an excellent memory for verbatim on regurgitating something that I can read and regurgitate it word for word. I had to work on that. Taking the test, the SOP, I read it once or twice, I got it. I can word familiarize, because multiple choice, you can say, process elimination, and every time we picked up, we took a test pretty much anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you learn those steps, and I never thought that was hard, the high school is, but when it came to like me and you were very, as I remember it, me and you had very similar instruction and the way we treated people and the way we demanded was very similar. We weren't a degrading type person, or we still seen people as human. Maybe not always the recruits, but we always seen the people that work for us as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't from what I seen, is because me and you, if people didn't know, we were senior drill instructors for 2 cycles together.
Yeah.
And in the same series.
Yeah.
So
next to each other.
Right next to each other. So everything like his questions up to my deck, my questions down to his deck. And I couldn't tell you who the other one was, but I could tell you it was me and you, because we would do, we would make something that was supposed to be more serious, but it wasn't wartime, it was training. And if anybody that really knows the training cycle, the training cycle is what teaches the Marines to be Marines. We're the ones that reiterate how to be Marines. And sometimes we get caught up to, and sometimes we'll get caught up to what we believe the Marine Corps is and not what the Marine Corps is.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
So, my first cycle was rough. I won't lie. There's people, I listened to you and Jamal's podcast, and we all had it rough. Like if that was the only cycle I did, or the second cycle I did, I'd be like, no, this ain't good. Like my first cycle was, I didn't go in on training day 1, so I didn't know what was going on. Because it was my first cycle after DI school, and you go in and they kind of have a prejudgment of you going through DI school. And that I never really agreed about that, because they'd be like, oh, he's not loud. Oh, he don't move fast enough.
Yeah.
And these are, when you're talking, what am I? I'm in my 30s by then. And I'm running around 23, 24-year-olds. There's
a big difference.
There's a 10-year difference. I've already hit my peak, and I'm starting to go down, where these guys are still hitting their peak of, prime performance of just athleticism, or, being an athlete in that sense. And, where we've been in charge of people before, we know how you should treat people, I would say, but it's how we've been treated.
Yeah.
And then being on, the ground side, they can treat their guys good, but they don't always treat them good. And, their wings, we're just used to working, and the ranks work together, because, you still got a sergeant and a lance corporal doing, the same job a lot of times. This one has a higher qual. Sometimes the corporal might have a higher qual than the staff sergeant that just came back from a B billet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it's like that, in the band. Like, you can't just be an ass to everybody, because you got the sergeants playing the tuba and you got the lance corporal playing the flute.
Mhm.
One
Yeah.
can't, one can't. So the first cycle, it was prejudged. Then you get over there and going to 2nd Battalion. I'm going to a gunny team, and I show up after my 30 days of leave or whatever it was. I'm 2 weeks in, so I know what training cycle is, but I don't know what the recruits have already learned or what the J has already taught them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're trying to reiterate stuff, and he's like, we didn't teach them that, or already taught them that, and they want you to do what I call busy work. Pretty much, you're not doing nothing, but they want you to look like you're doing something,
Mm-hmm.
And the first cycle, they, as in your previous podcast, a lot of those guys got sent away, set down, relieved, or gone. NJP. The ones that didn't, sometimes they didn't do very good. Later on, and guys that were in my class, a couple of them went up. They moved up to J's like the next cycle, and they got in trouble because what did they do? They did what they were taught the previous cycle.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know.
And it's like, and you get taught one way to do it, and unless you're a strong enough individual to say, hey, this isn't right, and it's a cyclic thing, just keeps going, man.
And from what if you look at, I don't know how it is now. I know that they got a platoon of females in with a male company, where they'll have like 5 males and 1 female company. I can't speak on that, how that dynamic works, because when we did it, we could walk across the squad bay, we could walk through squad bays to the other side of the building. I'm pretty sure they can't do that now. It's not so much hit Marine on deck. So
very true.
But the general idea of training the future Marines, the job satisfaction of doing the job was amazing. Transferring or transformation of these young men, of what we would start with was what we would end with, would be phenomenal. You would get these ones that were just, they might not do well, but they would, some of them would do well. And I seen that from where, our first cycle, they had a kid that was in another platoon that the drill sergeants were rough on. Like, I always thought they went, that step above. I told him, I remember telling him, I said, after you leave here, nobody knows who you are. What you do after you leave here and you go to your school and then you go to your fleet, that's who you are. And
yeah.
I never thought nothing of it. I just said, hey, this is the Marine Corps. Especially if you do certain jobs, unless you're in a certain job that goes same place, every time you go somewhere else, you're going to meet new people. And what you do there, nobody knows what you did before. You could have been a rock star. It's what you do now. And no shit, like 3 years, 4 years later, this kid runs into me in the PX and stops me and says, I was right. And I didn't know who this kid was. I mean, this was the shit, the not the great recruit of this platoon had become a corporal and was doing amazing things. And he says,
yeah.
All he pretty much says, I seen what I was doing here, and what I didn't like, I changed here when I got here, and I have a great, my Marine Corps experience is good. Is pretty much what he said. And I thought that was, that was interesting, just because of us doing our job of, training them and not overtraining them or undertraining them. Because one thing I was kind of weird about is a lot of drill instructors have, foot lockers painted by recruits, or they have the cover blocks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird. I never believed in him because I believed that if you took a recruit out of train to paint these, unless they were doing it on a fire watch, then they're losing sleep. But you're taking something away from them out of the training cycle that they would never learn. They would never get.
Yeah, very true.
I mean, a lot of guys that have a lot of cool ones and, something that's really cool, but I just always looked at it as like, and I think it was my third cycle senior saying, hey, he had said something about it because we had made him one. We had the recruits make him one because it was his last cycle. And he was a different character. I don't know if you even remember him. Gunnery Sergeant Cobb.
Oh, yeah.
He is a little different.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I had what was his name? Joel. I remember his first name. I can't remember his last name from my second. Not Hernandez. He was only he came over from Echo Company. He was there for one cycle. No,
I don't remember.
But he was just over there for
I don't.
just one cycle. But he was the most laid back one there was. Like he didn't stress about nothing. He's like, here's the drill instructor say, hey, I'll bring him back, get back to catch him, take your shower real quick and stuff like that. Because first cycle, you weren't allowed to take showers. You went up on the hill, you weren't allowed to get off the hill.
Yeah.
First time drill instructor. And, for us, we didn't know what we didn't know at that time. We didn't know that we were Marines. We were allowed to take a shower. That was them imposing their will of training us the way they thought we should be trained, not the way the Marine Corps thought we should be trained.
Yep.
And that goes back to the Marine Corps is great. It's just, it goes back to the personnel that how they have their image of the Marine Corps in them.
Yeah. And everybody's different. What they see is different.
Yeah. And that's how you can go to one unit, be there for 3 months to get a new CO, and it changes again. You're like,
yeah,
this is a great unit. And then other people will be like, I don't like that unit.
Yeah. And I will say our time while we were there, it was very eye-opening, we'll say it that way, because the way we were treated as we were coming up was the exact opposite of how we treated people whenever we were in the position. And I think that worked to our benefit, at least in my opinion, it did. And I think you and me, we worked really well together as seniors, and we were able to really change the mentality of how we were treating the drill instructors.
I see the same way, because most everybody that had worked for me after I became a senior, or even when I was a J, most everybody that was there, they all became what is it? Series gunnery sergeants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I had Livingston worked for me for my second deployment. I think I made him mad because he always wanted to put me on duty when I came back from quota. But Gunner Sergeant Farmer was also under me at one time. I don't remember what Sims retired as, but I believe he is also Series Gunner Sergeant.
Yeah, I think so.
I know he's retired. I believe I follow him on Facebook. He's a great guy. He was always kind of intense to the point. And so,
but he was level-headed.
He was very level-headed. Like we have some of the guys that were like, I call, look, we all know who the poster child was that could get, he would do so much stuff and then everybody kind of sweeps under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy outside of work, but like the work ethic at the time was like, he was trying to live two lives.
Yeah. It's true.
But yeah, we definitely, and we didn't try to go above and beyond. And we actually did, like, when I first got there, it was like, how many recruits can you drop?
Oh, yeah.
And our mentality, I remember when we went through, our mentality is, if we have to drop them, did we fail? where did we fail them? If it wasn't for them coming back, those first 2 weeks pumped for drugs, the thing is they wanted to be there. And, if they are passing everything, why would we go through a fault and try to get them to tap out? I got down there. I did, our first one was pretty rough. They revamped it a little bit for the second one. And then by the third one, they were still bringing some people over. And then it started flowing a little bit after that. We were still, they're bringing some drill instructors to, from what happened that first cycle. And about a year in, they had finally, it kind of leveled out of what worked and what wasn't working. So yeah, it was DS school, like my first senior, I don't blame him for anything. I think he's a great guy. I've actually ran into him a few times. Like I ran into him in Afghanistan after the fact, and I ran into him. We both went to, was it TAPS together or transitional out of the Marine Corps together. He was, kind of like wrong place, wrong time. Because he had went to another company. He had to start all over again and work himself up, because of what he got blamed for. And it was mostly, the serious gunnery sergeants that were the poison, I should say. So I did 5 cycles. I can't remember if it was one J cycle, like 3rd, 4th hat cycles, because we had such big platoons, because that was during the ramp up of the Marine Corps. When we had, 90-man herds, 98-man herds of recruits. And then I think me and you kind of were on quota at the same time. You went to the pool because you're the pool staff in CIC, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Before you came back to be a senior. And I worked over a battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote the schedule. So like me coming back as a senior, I knew the schedule. That was no doubt, because I had written it, and I was over there for nearly a year of working in the headquarters of working with the classroom, the pool, and getting people to how the schedule worked. So and then I working over there, you also know what the higher intent is for these recruits, and you also see who gets in trouble and who doesn't. You see who gets set down in their different companies and which ones have to answer what they did. So I know when we went back, we treated our drill instructors fairly, and we treated the recruits firmly, like they should. Granted, we would still dehumanize them. Well, in my mind, dehumanize them as things that we have to get through, but we would not treat them as such.
Yeah. Very true.
And we would distinct between when training is over and, if they're hurt, they're hurt, I was it my second or 3rd cycle? I learned, maybe it was my, have a recruit fall down, and there ain't nothing wrong with him. He's just tired. He ain't hurt. You just kick him up, tell him to get up there.
Yeah, very true.
So it's like I learned how to read people a whole lot better. Like you could read people pretty well, but there you could read a lie of people faking pain.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah.
But it's probably one of the hardest, but also one of the most rewarding duty stations that I was at, because I know me and you on the side, we'd smoke our platoons, and we would we could also joke too, like Talladega Nights was big right during that time. We would just do quotes all the time.
That's true. Yeah.
Just so we could lighten up our moods, because otherwise you get so involved in it.
Oh yeah.
Of the race and trying to be the best. Like our satisfaction is me and you are, between 2nd and 3rd all the time. That you'd win one, I would win one. And there was one platoon that won drill, and supposedly they're the better platoon, and they got ranked better than us, and they failed. I don't know, you remember that? They failed. Yeah. They failed the battalion commander's inspection. Me and you passed.
Yeah.
And that day on, you go to that day, you're like, maybe they just didn't want us to win because we're two gunny teams. They thought but we put out a better product than Marine. We bet at the end of the day, our weapons weren't dirty. Our uniforms were all together.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, they changed the criteria after that of because we went over. He says we will not announce a winner of lead platoon or honor platoon until after battalion commander's inspection, because the person that won it lost.
Yeah.
I can remember who his name is now. He's a realtor out there in California. He's a good guy. Tompkins, I think it was, or Thompson, yeah. But that was pretty interesting that we had done that and that had happened, and they had to change it just because of that. I also remember that you taught your guys how to march like the band.
Oh, we did the slow march.
The slow march, yes. That was awesome. I thought that was cool.